There is an illusion that has been following you for years, but it's so subtle, so silent, that you may have never noticed it. The truth is, the problem was never the world. It was never the lack of opportunities, nor the people around you, nor the events that seem to pull you back into the same cycles. What really holds you back is the angle from which you chose to look at all of this. Imagine someone spending their entire life observing the same scenery, through the same window, with the same tired gaze, hoping that somehow the outside would change. Without realizing it, the vision narrows, the possibilities fade, and what remains is a repetitive reality that only confirms what the mind already expects to see. Maybe that's why, even after so many attempts, even after reading, studying, searching, you still feel that silent stagnation inside you. That feeling of always being 2 steps behind the life you really want to live, as if there were an invisible wall between what you desire and what you can achieve. But here is the first truth that needs to be felt, not just heard. You are not stuck. What's stuck is the way you chose to look. And as long as you keep looking at life through the lenses of resistance, scarcity, doubt, the world around you will keep reflecting exactly that. Today, maybe it's time to turn your face, to truly see what has always been waiting for you on the other side of your own perception. The hidden mechanism. How your observation is programming the field without you knowing. There is an invisible layer that connects everything around you, a silent field that watches you with relentless attention. It doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not, whether you understand the concepts or think all this is too abstract. This field is there, always responding, but what almost no one realizes is that the field doesn't react to what you say you want. It doesn't matter how many positive affirmations you make, how many times you tell yourself you deserve a better life, or how much you visualize a new beginning, because the field doesn't read words, it reads frequency, and your frequency is defined by what you observe with the most emotional consistency. It's not just what you think, it's what you feel while you think. It's the vibrational pattern you maintain when you look at your reality. Your focus is like a password that codes the field. Every time you choose to observe a problem with tension, the field registers, he is choosing this. Every time you get lost in thoughts of scarcity or dive into memories of pain, the field understands. This is the reality he confirms is true. It's as if the universe is always asking, what is your vibrational choice now? And your answer doesn't come in words, but in emotional attention. When you wake up and the first thing you feel is worry, the field listens. When you try to solve a problem, but do it with fear and urgency, the field listens. When you mentally relive a situation of rejection, failure, or loss, the field listens. And what does it do? It just delivers more of the same frequency. Not out of cruelty, but out of absolute neutrality. This mechanism is not interested in what you think is fair. It's not analyzing merits, intentions, or efforts. It only responds to what you sustain as your dominant emotional focus. Maybe that's why so many people live in this cycle of frustration, because while the mind screams for change, the body, the emotions, the attention remain tuned to the frequency of the problem. The truth is, as long as you observe life from a place of lack, it will continue reflecting lack. As long as you look at fear, it will keep growing in your perception. Because everything you sustain as focus becomes a vibrational instruction. And here's a detail that few stop to notice. Not observing is also a form of choice. Denial, avoidance, the state of emotional numbness, all of this also communicates something to the field. The absence of conscious presence is the unconscious presence of fear. Your body at this very moment carries the vibrational signature of what you most observe internally. And this is not a metaphor. Your chemistry, your neurology, your physiological responses are literally coding and sustaining the field around you. That's why, even when you try to change things on the outside, If the internal observer doesn't change, the world remains the same. You know that moment when you try to force positive thoughts, but deep down you feel it's just a superficial layer, that behind it there's still fear and resistance? That's the field showing you that the real frequency hasn't changed yet, because you don't access a new reality with the same tired gaze that built the previous one. And the question that remains now is, how long will you keep programming the field with the frequency of struggle? Yes, there is a way out, but it's not about doing more or trying to control what happens. It's about realizing how you've been observing, because what you call reality might just be the vibrational echo of your way of looking. And if you can truly feel this key turning inside you, the entire field starts to reorganize. The repetition effect, how you become a prisoner of the same cycle without realizing it. There comes a moment when everything seems to repeat itself. The same situations, the same challenges, the same feelings of limitation, as if the universe were stuck on a scratch record, playing the same track day after day. And no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you try to act differently, somehow everything returns to the same place. But what few people realize is that this cycle, this suffocating repetition, doesn't start outside. It's not in the events, it's not in the people, it's not in the circumstances. It starts within your attention. What happens is that throughout life, you were trained, without realizing it, to become an expert in observing what hurts. With each experience of rejection, of loss, of scarcity, your system learned to focus on danger signs. The mind started scanning reality, looking for the next mistake, the next lack, the next pain. And so, you became a master at detecting what limits, but a prisoner of a lens that only knows how to see what's missing. When something doesn't work out, you confirm the old pattern. When an opportunity doesn't happen, you validate the internal story that you're not capable. When someone treats you with indifference, the mind reinforces the script of rejection. And this is the most subtle and most cruel and effective repetition. Because with each new experience, you don't just relive the old cycle, you emotionally reinforce it. Your internal chemistry adjusts. Your vibrational field aligns again with the frequency of limitation. It's as if the entire universe were asking you, all the time, which version of reality are you choosing to observe now? And your answer, almost always, is the same. Maybe that's why you feel like you're always fighting, like running on a treadmill that never takes you anywhere. Because in essence, you are. And here there's a detail that almost no one has told you. It's not just the situation that repeats, it's your internal state in front of it. The body responds before the mind notices. A look, a phrase, a number in your bank account. And in a second, your system is already releasing the same hormones, the same thoughts, the same feelings you swore you didn't want to feel anymore. It's like a conditioned reflex, a script so well rehearsed that you don't even need to think to react. And the more you observe, the more reality reflects back. The more you feel, the more the field responds. The more you try to understand why everything stays the same, the more you feed, with attention, the very cycle. Because the field doesn't distinguish between what you love and what you fear. It only knows how to reflect what you vibrate. And maybe now you're beginning to realize that the real prison is not in the circumstances. It's in the way you've been trained to look. There's a hidden addiction to feeling what has always been familiar. As uncomfortable as it may be, the known pain often feels safer than the emptiness of the unknown. That's why, even when you try to change, a part of you, unconsciously, pulls you back to the old pattern. As if the mind were saying, this is where I know how to survive. But the price of staying in this cycle is high, because with each repetition, your faith in change weakens, your energy diminishes, and the feeling of helplessness grows. And at this point, many people fall into the most subtle trap of all, the desperate attempt to control reality, to force solutions, to fight even harder against what's happening, as if the only way out were to hit the wall harder, hoping that one day it will give way. But what they don't realize is that this struggle, this resistance, is just another chapter of the same story they want to end. The illusion of control. Why fighting the problem only makes it grow. There comes a moment when tiredness stops being just physical and becomes existential. A deep exhaustion from trying so much, from fighting so much, from wanting so badly to fix what always seems to be broken. Maybe you know this feeling well. The attempt to solve, to do more, to think of strategies, to find the next technique, the next book, the next video that will finally get you out of this place. But the more you try, the more it seems like reality contracts around you, as if the mere act of fighting feeds the problem you want to eliminate. There is a trap that most people don't notice. The illusion that control is the path to liberation. The mind, used to operating in survival mode, has convinced you that if you are not always in command, things will fall apart, that you need to stay alert, react, analyze, predict, resist. But what that same mind never told you is that the energy of resistance creates more of what you're trying to push away. When you look at a problem with tension, the field does not interpret your desire to solve it. It only registers your frequency of fear, urgency, lack. And how does the field respond? By delivering more situations that reinforce exactly that state. You feel the blockage, react with more effort, try to control even more, and the cycle closes. It's like being stuck in quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. And maybe the most painful thing is realizing that, on some level, you already know this. You've already noticed that. No matter how much you change strategies, the energy with which you move remains the same. This is the blind spot of most healing and transformation journeys. The attempt to solve the problem with the same vibration that created it. You want to escape scarcity, but you keep looking at money with fear. You want to attract a healthy relationship, but you keep observing love with distrust. You want to free yourself from anxiety, but you keep watching life with eyes of urgency. What you resist persists, not because of some cosmic punishment, but because the field can only give back what you keep feeding. And the question that needs to echo now is, how long will you keep fighting with your own creation? Because the truth is, the problem, most of the time, is not what's happening out there. It's the way you relate to what's happening. Observing with tension is like holding sand with clenched hands. The more force you apply, the more everything slips through your fingers. It takes a different kind of courage to let go. A courage that doesn't scream, but silences. That doesn't attack, but observes. That doesn't try to control, but chooses to trust. And if, at this moment, you feel that this truth is touching somewhere deep inside you, it makes sense to ask you one thing. If this message is resonating, if you can sense that maybe your struggle has been exactly what's keeping you in the same place, I invite you to pause now, take a deep breath, and leave that registered in the comments. Right, I let go of control and choose to trust. It's not just a comment, it's an act of awareness, a vibrational milestone, a declared choice that you're ready to look at life from a different place. The turning point. How to change your point of observation and rewrite the field. There is a moment with no scheduled time, no announcement, no external sign, a silent moment when something inside you simply decides to stop repeating. Not because everything outside has changed, but because suddenly you feel that you can no longer keep looking at life with the same eyes. This is the turning point. It doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't arrive with grand promises. It doesn't bring ready-made answers. But it brings a subtle clarity, almost imperceptible, that the way out was never on the outside. It was always in the place from where you observe. Up until now, maybe you've lived like someone walking down a dark corridor, always bumping into the same walls, complaining about the lack of space, without realizing that, at any moment, you could simply turn your face and realize that there was an open door right next to you. The problem is that, when the mind is addicted to survival, it doesn't look for doors. It looks for threats. It scans the environment, not to find solutions, but to anticipate dangers. And so, you spent years observing life with eyes of defense, of alertness, of distrust. But now, something is changing. The first key is the conscious pause. Not that superficial pause, where you take a deep breath for a few seconds and go back to repeating everything again. But a real pause. That suspends judgment, that silences automatic reaction, that makes room for a new kind of perception. It is in this space that you start to recognize the cycle, to notice how, in each situation, you had been reacting in the same way, the same emotions, the same thoughts, the same internal dialogues. And by recognizing, something starts to dissolve, because what is observed with awareness already begins to lose strength. The second step is emotional redirection. Here, you don't need to pretend that everything is fine. You don't need to force gratitude. You don't need to create artificial happiness. You just need to choose to change the focus. If before you looked at the problem with tension, now you choose to look at the possibility with presence. It's not about denying what's happening, but about asking yourself, from what place do I want to observe this now? Maybe it's a place of acceptance, maybe of curiosity, maybe just silence, but any choice that takes you out of the old automatic reaction already begins to rewrite the field. And here, something very profound happens. When you change the point of observation, reality has no other option but to start responding. The field follows your vibration always. Maybe at first, the change seems subtle, a small relief, a different thought, a less dense emotion. But with time and consistency, what once seemed impossible starts to reorganize, because what you call reality is just the delayed reflection of your previous vibration. And the good news is that the new vibration starts now, not when everything gets better, not when the problems disappear, but the exact moment when you choose to look differently. It's like turning your face after years of staring at the same wall. You don't need to force the door to open. You just need to stop looking at the wall and allow the new vision to reveal the way. And if, at this moment, a part of you feels that maybe it really is time to change your gaze, then know this: the field has already begun to listen. The biology of new observation. How your body and your energy respond immediately. What happens inside you at the exact moment you choose to change your perspective? There is an invisible movement, a subtle reconfiguration that often goes unnoticed by the conscious mind, but the body feels it immediately. The first change happens in your physiology. When you observe life from tension, your nervous system remains in a state of alert. Breathing becomes shallow, muscles tighten, the heart races, your brain, dominated by the chemistry of survival, restricts creativity, blocks clarity, and feeds defensive thoughts. It's as if, for years, your body had learned to live in an emotional battlefield, even when, on the outside, there is no real threat. But the moment you pause, breathe, and consciously choose to observe differently, something begins to give way. Cortisol levels, which previously kept you in a state of resistance, start to drop. Your heart rate slows down. Blood flow begins to circulate more evenly between the heart and the brain. The internal communication, which was previously driven by fear, starts making room for more creative, calmer, more aligned responses. Your body reacts to your observation, because what you feel is the direct reflection of the lens through which you're looking at life. When you change the way you observe, the chemistry that sustains you also changes. The brain circuits that for years were reinforced by the habit of observing the problem begin to weaken. New connections, even if timid at first, start to form. It's as if, little by little, you are sculpting within yourself a new way of existing. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity, but you don't need a technical term to feel it. Just notice how your body responds when you stop fighting and simply choose to observe with presence. You may feel a slight relief in your chest, a deeper breath arising effortlessly, a wave of warmth passing through your shoulders, or even an internal silence enveloping you, even though the world outside remains the same. This is the beginning of the biological transformation that accompanies every change in observation, because the quantum field that responds to your frequency also starts to reorganize. What once seemed solid, fixed, immutable, begins to show small cracks. A new possibility begins to emerge, and it is exactly in this space, between the old reaction and the new choice, that your body, your mind, and your energy align with what you want to create. This change doesn't need to be dramatic. It starts in the small pauses, in the moments when, faced with discomfort, you decide not to react as before. When you choose to breathe instead of tensing, when you choose to observe instead of judging. And each time you do this, you send new information to your nervous system, a new message to your cells, a new command to the field. Your body stops being a reflection of old resistance and becomes the channel through which the new reality begins to manifest. Because, in the end, the universe doesn't just respond to what you think, but to what you become vibrationally. And maybe, now, what you need most is a simple, direct, and emotionally possible path to anchor this new observation. Redirection practice. The exact step that aligns your observation with what you want to create. Now that you've started to feel that real change happens at the point of observation, perhaps the silent question arises that accompanies many internal processes. How do I do this in practice? How do I choose a new perspective when everything inside me still carries the memory of pain, struggle, lack? And the answer begins with something that may seem too simple, but is actually the foundation of all true transformation. Presence. The first step is to notice the trigger. That instant, when you feel your body reacting, your chest tightening, your thoughts speeding up, as if the old programming were about to take control once again. It might be news that arrives suddenly, a message that destabilizes you, a number in your bank account, someone's look, or even a thought that comes out of nowhere, reactivating the cycle. Awareness begins the very second you realize, here it is, again, the old pattern wanting to pull me in. And instead of reacting as always, the invitation is for you to pause, a real pause. Not the one accompanied by judgmental thoughts or attempts to think positive, but a clean pause where you simply breathe and give yourself a few seconds to observe what you're feeling without trying to change anything. It's in this space between stimulus and response that your freedom begins to be born. When you allow this pause, something magical happens. The automatic cycle loses strength because the old program can only run if you enter it unconsciously. Then comes the second movement, observe without judgment. Here, your mission is not to fight what you feel, nor to blame yourself for still reacting. It's just to look with curiosity, with kindness, with a presence that says, without words, I see you, but I am no longer you. This is the key that starts to dissolve the cycle. When you observe without merging with the emotion, the field begins to receive new vibrational information that there is someone conscious behind all this, an observer who was once asleep, but who now is waking up. And then the third movement. Redirect the gaze. After recognizing the trigger and observing without judgment, comes the moment of conscious choice. Here, you don't need to create an elaborate script or imagine a perfect future. You just need to choose a new point of focus. It could be a simple thought, a memory of lightness, a soft feeling of gratitude, or even the simple act of looking at the environment around you and finding something that brings you a minimum of neutrality. The question that can guide you at this moment is, what if I've been looking at all this from the wrong place? This question doesn't require an intellectual answer. It simply opens an internal space where tension eases and your frequency begins to change. Every time you repeat this process, you teach your body, your field, and your reality to respond differently. It doesn't matter how many times you need to return to this exercise. It doesn't matter if, at first, it seems like nothing is happening. True transformation is never immediate. It's built in the silent choices you make every day between reacting or observing. And little by little, you'll notice that situations that used to paralyze you start to lose strength. Those emotions that used to dominate you now pass like waves that you observe, but that no longer drag you. The external world may even continue presenting the same scenarios for a while, but inside you, something has already changed. And when this internal change becomes consistent, the field inevitably begins to bend. Because reality always, always, always obeys the consciousness that observes it. And maybe now it's time for you to choose with your whole heart from where you want to look at life from now on. Not because someone told you it's possible, but because in this moment, you feel that it no longer makes sense to keep looking from the old place. We've reached the end of our journey, and maybe now you can feel what was always hidden behind every resistance, every cycle, every repetition. It wasn't the world that was holding you back. It was the place from which you chose to look at it. The reality that seemed rigid was just a mirror, reflecting your most intimate frequency. And today, you had the chance to turn your face, to breathe differently, to open an internal space for a new way of observing. You don't need to have all the answers, nor feel an immediate transformation. Just know that real change begins with a silent choice, not to react as before. And if you felt this shift, if something inside you touched a deep place, right here in the comments, I choose to look differently. That way I'll know that you walked with me until the last second of this video.